get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Katie Dunsworth-Reiach of TalkShopMedia.com. And Katie, before I formally introduce you, Katie has a very, very impressive background. We're going to get into it. Before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. We'll talk about what you learned at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, right? Mm-hmm. And Cameron Herold has some amazing books. He's been on the podcast a few times, and Katie will talk a little bit about that because she has a personal relationship with Cameron throughout the years. And another one, since this is part of the Top Agency series, I did one with Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey has the Second Bite podcast where he actually helps pair private equity with agencies and help sell agencies. So that was a really interesting one where he talks about valuations and the landscape. And what's interesting is he found that sometimes people make more on the second bite than the first, especially in private equity world. So that was really interesting. And Kevin Hergen was another good one of Spinia Tech. Kevin has had an agency since 1995, and he just talked about the evolution of the agency. And Kate, I know we'll talk about TalkShop Media because TalkShop Media has gone through an evolution from the start till now too. That and many more, check out on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. In Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. Katie, we call ourselves the magic elves that we're working in the background to make it look easy for the host and the company so they can run their business and, create great content. So, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Katie Dunsworth-Reiach. She gained recognition after co-founding Smart Cookies at the ripe young age of 23 years old. And Katie was featured on Oprah, I think Good Morning America, and a multitude of other channels. And Smart Cookies was a money mentoring program. This led to her doing regular work in the media. She included co-hosting a W Network series. She co-authored 2 bestsellers with Random House and contributed regularly to CTV and Global News. She now owns multiple marketing and communication agencies, including TalkShop Media and IF. And her past clients, like I was mentioning, go far and wide: Bath and Body Works, Starbucks, Ford, SoulCycle, and many, many more. And Katie, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
So just start off, talk about TalkShop Media and what you do.
Yeah. TalkShop, we're a full service communications agency and marketing shop. And we really consider ourselves in the business of redefining how companies get known and understood. And that's any sort of mix of services from digital marketing, social media through to earned media, PR. I was mentioning earlier, we do issues management. And so it's just, full suite of comms services.
So, TalkShop Media is over 12 years old at this point. Talk about starting IF.
Yeah, well, IF was actually an acquisition. It was interesting. It was an acquisition of a really talented group that was retiring. We were actually looking at it through TalkShop. It's TalkShop. We've grown a lot via acquisition and have kind of like on and off, debated like, where's the line for us with marketing and communications? Are we going to go into creative services or do we sort of live more on the other side of the line, digital, that side of things? So I opted to go in with another colleague of mine and purchase IF, and it's been, it's a different animal. We really are a creative agency, sort of true advertising, which is in a lot of ways working with artists, illustrators, creative directors, a completely different business cycle. That's actually been, it's more of a passion project for me. It's I am a creative in an entrepreneur's body, and so I love the creative process, and I just think it's the most talented group of people. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. And then on the Talk Shop side, we really are, so that shop, so IF is sort of a smaller boutique agency. Talk Shop, we're independent, but we're about 60 people, just opened our office in California and Los Angeles, and have offices across Canada as well.
Is that still a part of the strategy? Do you still want to do more acquisitions with Talk Shop?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's really about, for us, we're always looking. It is really about the talent that comes along with it. I'm not super into buying just like a book of business to buy it. It's, it works for some people. For us, we really liked to bring along great people that level us up. And often we bring a lot to the table too. And we've had a lot of success with that. And we've had some failures, and I could talk about that.
What do you look for? Start off, what do you look for in acquisition?
Yeah. It just depends. So like, for market entry, so going into the States, when we went into Toronto, it just helps us, it expedites growth, right? So it sort of takes a known entity, and just like gives you a jumping off point. When we acquired in Toronto, we, really were looking for talent acquisition. It was a super tough time in the market. So we felt like, hey, there are two awesome founders who were getting out, more because they had another business that they wanted to pursue. So we didn't feel like, so yeah, we look for talent. We look for that. Does it fill a hole that we don't have? So at that time, we didn't have a ton of consumer brands. They were only consumer brands. So that was really good. I like the founders. Like, I think that, if you like them, that you're usually going to like the culture that they have built. So that matters. And it really matters to me that their legacy is looked after. So, Sam, who was one of the founders that we purchased it was called ROI at the time. Her agency, I still, we've stayed in close touch. I am so proud of the business that she's now doing. We've supported her in that. So yeah, that matters. And another shop we bought was an old friend of mine, actually through Cameron, we know each other, but yeah, we've remained incredibly close. So that matters.
What about, do you want them to be at a certain revenue level?
We tend to I don't know that this is going to be a strategy that we'll continue to pursue. It was sort of that like, hey, you got to start somewhere. We were really looking like sub $2 million because that was not a market that was very, there wasn't a lot of action there. And more often than not, we were looking for founders who were just like, they didn't want to stay on. It was a healthy business. Yeah. So that was sort of now as we've matured, I have less, the acquisition, like the transactions were not big transactions. Like one of them, my lawyer was like, my time is going to cost more than this acquisition. So like, so they weren't massive, but they sort of like made some waves and we learned something. But yeah, now we would be looking more at where,
or maybe a little larger.
Yeah. Profitable, in a different segment. There maybe there's some like technology or proprietary things that we're interested in, that kind of stuff.
What about, funding acquisitions as far as, I know there's a lot of different ways to structure it, using, obviously your capital or a loan, or how did you look at structuring?
You're gonna get me on my soapbox of
Do it
for women, because I actually think there's a lot less conversations with female-owned businesses about how to structure acquisitions. I really felt like we ran up against more. It's hard to know if it's like I think women in general go into things more timid. We self-funded all of our acquisitions up until recently. We have we own our building. So we have a massive asset that we could secure loans against. We were not getting we were not a huge business until, we're not even a huge business now. We're about $10 million, but yeah, we just weren't getting, I don't know if we weren't asking the right people. So I feel very passionately to do a lot of work with the forum, which is Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, which really tries to just create more connection points to access to capital, mentorship. But, if I had had more people I could have gone to ask these questions, I think, I also felt like a bit embarrassed. We had done a couple of sessions. And so it was like, I think people assumed we knew what we were doing. And, yeah. So now we've got we've got an advisory board. I think we have more relationships in the right places and are very bullish about borrowing money, but yeah.
So in the future, do you think you will go to like more institutions, or you'll kind of just keep it the way you've done it?
I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think that it's like, it just depends on what.
It's not the strategy you'll go after. Yeah. I had Cheryl Conti on. It was an interesting interview of Impact Seat, and that's what they were doing. They were looking at funding more minority female-owned businesses.
Impact investing is so important. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting to hear a conversation. She was saying exactly what you were saying, basically, is like, even when she went into boardrooms to get money, she felt discriminated against because of gender and race.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, even like in, purchasing an asset. So buying a building that houses our head office. Women have to produce more paperwork, have more, co-signers and I mean, we had a ton of money to put down. So it's a massive problem. And I know this from my Smart Cookies days of really focusing on financial literacy for women. This is just not a conversation women are having. We are not, though women are much better investors, our track record and the way we manage money, we're not risk takers. So I think that's very much been our pattern, is like, we've self-funded, like we have done the bulk of it ourselves. And I look back and I'm like, why? Money was so cheap. Why on earth did we tie up our own money to do that? But yeah, so I think it's just really important that you are surrounded by, the right conversations, the right people, and then that we push for that better access, because women are damn good with money, if you ask me.
Yeah, Cheryl told some kind of crazy stories about being discriminated against in these boardrooms, real specific examples. So I encourage people to check that episode out. But we'll talk about how Talk Shop Media evolved. But you mentioned failures. So
where do you want to start?
We have to dig into that. I mean, I had Thomas. He founded Republics, and he grew his agency through acquisition to 38 million in 3 years. But he was talking about, and his background came from that was his background in doing acquisitions. So that was what he did before he had his agency. But he talked about even knowing what he knew, failures that occurred. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear what you learned from some of those.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for us was really, sometimes if we found something for a great price, I was so proud of myself. One of the deals we were doing, it was they were sort of dragging their heels back and forthing on, in Canada, there's a tax exemption that you can get if you do a share sale versus an asset sale. And we were like, we are not doing a share sale. So if that's what you want, that's just not happening. And so that prolonged the process. Anyway, the pandemic hit, and then they were suddenly like, just kidding, everything's fine. You can have, let's just sign. And we were like, no, you're a heavy to hospitality and retail. So we're going to just take a beat while the world is closed down. And then by the time we reconnected, they had lost 80+% of their clients. So, I mean, we picked them up.
You dodged that bullet.
Oh man, totally. And my lawyer said, you could do this deal on your credit card if we're just doing the baseline sort of math that they had outlined. So we were like, great, what a good deal. Well, it was a terrible deal. They were not profitable. We rushed due diligence. So we ended up, inheriting really a team of basically I said like, we got them and then found a team of unpaid interns in the closet who were like churning out work that like, we wouldn't obviously do that. And so then you're like, oh my God. So we really ended up, when I we did a hard push probably 5 years into our business of really zeroing in on, profitability and EBITDA. And it was like up, down, or out. So up meaning like we have to up their retainer, down as in we reduce the amount of time, or out as in we can't make money on them and they have to go. And it was shocking. We went from sort of a sub double digit profitability number to 30% in a year, and it was like, didn't compromise on service, didn't compromise on quality, just like actually measured what we were doing. Anyways, and so that actually ended up costing us a ton of money. And we did that deal also on just the premise of like, oh, well, we're acquiring great talent. Well, the talent all friggin' left because they didn't subscribe to how and it wasn't, they didn't like it. It was just like, well, they should be able to spend unlimited amounts of time doing influencer mailers. And we were like, no, it's not. No, we're not going to do that.
I like how you said that, how you thought about it. I'd love to know how else you found to best integrate, but you said you kind of categorize as up, down, or out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
What else helped the methods when you do integration with a new company?
I think, and it really is up to the owner. Most places don't want you to meet the team until the deal is done. The ones where we have met the team and they've been really transparent, it's so much more seamless because they can come in, they can tour your operation, they can ask your team. We've really tried to just do open doors. I think the other thing is to not just immediately upon acquisition be like, well, you work here now and this is how we do things, and everything that you've worked on doesn't exist anymore. It's like, we really try to give a 6-month period of like, you have some awesome processes. Let's see how you're doing this. And we don't change a thing. In some cases, we'll actually like the one that I think was the most successful, we had them continue to operate under their old company for about 3 months and then made the announcement. So they were like technically under our roof, but we didn't publicize it. And then by that point, we had really worked out sort of the back end of that. And the team was able to integrate. So we still operated like we had, all hands meetings together. We have like a weekly sales meeting. So they were part of that. That probably went the best. And then I think, just the more you can spend really getting to know the individuals too. I think that they just sometimes become an afterthought. And for us, more often than not, the people piece is really the most important piece. They hold the relationships. They hold a lot of like the key information that you bought. So it's really important that you like know who you're, I feel that way about like, there's not a single person in my company that I wouldn't know their name or what their, parents are doing, or, like we really pride ourselves on knowing our team.
Hey, before you hit record, this is kind of, you were saying from a talent perspective, you take a little different approach, right? Some people chase awards. Talk about your approach on talent.
Yeah. So we're always ranked like a top 100 employer. And we really, realize from our clients that what matters the most is like we're looking. Oh yeah, there we are.
If you're listening to the audio, I am pulling up the talkshopmedia.com website. We're on the careers page, but keep going. I'm just gonna.
We're overhauling our website, but it's our careers page. Yeah. So we really made a pledge to have the best talent, which means to get the best talent. We're competing against the tech companies, and we're head office in Vancouver, where like Lululemon is a massive employer here. So we had to be very competitive. And so, that really meant not just being values based, but showing up and giving our people what they wanted. That was, more time off, better maternity, parental leave. We've really invested in justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We call it JEDI. We also have sort of an in-house entrepreneurial, we call it in residence, where we both invest in and encourage our team to help build businesses that we can, take a bit of an equity stake in and really, but do it still while having like full-time employment. Daily
I want
huddles.
to talk about the in residence for a second because I read that and I found it very interesting. But maybe let's pull out, we're looking at the talk shop values here, right? Get it, seek solutions, keep good company, pursue bright ideas, be business minded. Wonder if which one, just to talk about one of these and how it came about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We distilled down because we were like, 5 is a lot. We actually distilled it down to 4, probably the one that everyone knows. Forget it, or like knows within Talk Shop. Like the top one they would all say is get it. Get it. It was interesting. It was a polarizing one. Some people felt like, oh, it really it's a competitive sort of pushes like hustle culture. I like the double entendre. I like that it was like, go after it. But really where it came from was we need to be able to understand complexity and nuance quickly. So we have to, and I can meet someone and be like, they have get it. Like they are picking up what I'm putting down. They're quick learners. They can read the room. They ask the right questions. They ask questions. Like it's pretty shocking to me how many people are, just listening to sort of have something interesting to say, for their chance to talk, not to, listen to understand or ask questions. So that is probably our top value. And then, we refined those 5 down to business minded. So that's like, we really have to have sort of an enterprising mindset. We are hired 9 times out of 10 because businesses are trying to grow and we have to understand how their business operates, how we support that. Care wildly is sort of where we've merged a couple of those values. So that I think is what sets us apart is, I'm not saying knowing everyone's name, but really having meaningful connections with one another. I am the most proud probably of anything that we've done of there are lifelong friendships. People are in each other's weddings. There's kids that are, born that we have close relationships with. We are very caring when it comes to, and I think caring in that we do sweat the small stuff that, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so we don't want to, do things incorrectly. We really want to be thoughtful. And then the final one is seek equity. And that is, really just about this pledge we have to just continuing justice, seeking justice through work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that's a big one. It's a spectrum.
It looks like these are pictures of your space, right? Is that right? This is really cool. So there's actually like a get it
wall. Yeah, we all are
cool.
Boardrooms are named after our values. Yeah, it's a very, very values focused company. And we created those initial values and then went back to the team and said, look, we're a sum of all of our parts. So what are their, seek equity was one that was added. Care wildly was one that was added. So we've definitely made it a representation of everyone.
Talk about the in-residence program and why you decided to do that. Because it's a bit of a commitment, right? So just talk about that program and why you started it.
Yeah. So it came from, the belief that there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs with really great ideas within our walls. And sometimes what holds them back is the idea of I have to give up my, I did that, left Cameron and went out on my own. But we think you can do both. And so we really wanted to try and create space where we can carve out time for somebody to support them to create their own business and launch that. And then also, in that freeing up their time, there's a bit of an investment in that business itself. And so, and we have all the skills you need to have to run or certainly to launch a successful business. And I think you can learn a lot through how we've built our business too. So mentorship is obviously part of that, as well as we've got a really robust network of whether it's VCs or other people with specialty in e-com or whatever it might be. The other piece that's sort of, and we're still working on the mechanism of this, but is also we work with such fantastic companies, some of which are like going public, or, there is a opportunity to own a small stake in that company. And so I think it's very motivating both for our clients and for our team to be like, hey, I worked on, I'm not saying we do this with Snowflake, but we worked with Snowflake, which is a data warehousing business. And it's just like, if you knew that your work, where you're getting them lots of media coverage and sharing their incredible technology with everyone, is supporting their stock price or helping, you'd be even more motivated if you had a piece of that. And so we really believe in that. And I also, as I mentioned, financial literacy is a thread that runs through my life. And I think it's really important for people to have multiple revenue streams. I think you have to. And so being able to give them an opportunity to gain wealth through investing is something we'd love to do more of.
What would an ideal scenario in the in-residence program look like? Like, would they still be working, let's say, at Talk Shop Media, but also like what do you envision?
I mean, the ideal scenario is they're so wildly successful that they love the business that they've built, and they transition out of the role, and we can sort of see that horizon coming. We haven't gotten there yet. I think the uptake has actually been surprising. People love the idea, but actually taking that leap of bringing something to market. We've done 2 small ventures. One was a daycare. The other was, more of a training business, and learned a lot. But I've been surprised at people's appetite.
It's all gonna, I think it takes shape in so many different ways because everyone's different. So but in ideal scenarios, someone's coming, they're working there. Maybe they have this other thing that they want to pursue, and then Talk Shop will provide advice and maybe some funding.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. We're sitting on cash. So we're like very bullish on putting money into things if we feel like it's the right, it's the right model.
Yeah. Talk about, how would you make it first to 1-800-GOT-JUNK?
This is a good story. So, so when I applied, if I was 23 when Smart Cookies, I think I was maybe 20. I think I got hired. I was a very mature, I kind of blew through. I didn't go to traditional university. I went to like a technology school, sort of blew through like a broadcast journalism program, landed in like I did my first job was marketing junior mining companies, which ironically taught me about penny stock investing. So I think I was like 19 day trading, silver companies, which if I had held one of them now, it's a copper company that I held back then at like 20 cents. It's now worth like hundreds of dollars. I was like, I would have paid for everything if only I had known. Anywho, so I, from that job, I had met a guy at a party. His name was Christopher Bennett, and he worked at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And I just remember him loving it so much. And there was I wanted to sort of move from marketing, which was not my favorite, to not my favorite, but like I really love journalism and I love writing, and to PR. And so it was at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. They did these group interviews. So it honestly was, I think, brilliant. It would be harder to do them now. But back then, so they rounded up, the top 8 applicants. I think there was probably 7 or 8 of us in a room. And it was Cameron, I think he was the COO, or maybe not. He was in ops. And then I think it was actually Christopher. And so they go around, so they just sort of rotate. So they maybe ask 12 questions and they rotate their way around. What's the top media coverage you've gotten? And one of the final questions was like, what are your salary expectations? And so I was in a room with like, professional, seasoned PR folks or comms folks. And so this is probably the early 2000s. So they were, 80, 100. And I probably was making sub $40,000 at the time. And I was like, if I can make $45,000, I will. Anyway, so then I was like, well, I can't. If everyone's saying 100, like I can't. I need to say like 50. And then one of the questions they asked was like, who do you think did the best in this interview? I was shocked at how many people said themselves. And I was like, well, of course you're going to say yourself, but like, you should. Anyway, everyone said themselves. And so then I also knew, this was funny too, about like reading the room. So I knew one of the girl, Cameron is very expressive. So you can read him like a book. And I could tell that he had a connection with this woman. They'd gone to high school together or something. And you could tell he just thought she was great. And so I was like, well, they're obviously going to hire this one. So he likes her. And he's
Is that what you said?
And so I said, oh, I thought Lindsay, like she didn't actually have a super strong interview, but I was like, I think Lindsay made a lot of good points. And I chose her anyways. So they hired us both.
So what did you say for the salary expectation at the time?
I said 50. And
You
so
did.
I'm sure they were like, well, we can get two of them for the price of what everyone else wants. So yeah. But you know what? That was a good, two things I took from that. Hiring two people. We were so competitive with each other. And she was like a ski racer, like a, not professional ski racer, but she like was very just a competitive personality. And I am too. So, and I remember being like, I can write. Like she wasn't a very good writer. So I was like, you might outwork me, but I will outwrite you. And so, yeah, it was good. So they got a very hardworking team. We really set the stage for performance within that company.
What else did you learn working there and from Cameron?
Oh my gosh. I think, one of the things I still do to this day, they call it goal setting and review, GSNR. We do a GSNR at TalkShop. It's just such a simple but important process of asking like sort of three main questions. Like where do you want to grow? Where do you think you need to improve? And then what can we do to get you there? Are kind of the main themes. And we really do, we use this great technology called Bamboo HR. So it's like you can do all of it. It kind of keeps it all centralized in the cloud. I would say the other thing, they do those huddles. I would say we've definitely taken the huddle model.
I saw on your page, even on the careers page, it says daily huddles, weekly creative sessions, quarterly town halls, and then sunshines.
Yeah, Sunshines. Yeah. Sunshines is straight out of like the sorority system, which is sort of like a shout out. It's like the idea of catch people doing things right. We've morphed that to, I kind of went back into we have a managing partner. So one of my partners kind of runs day-to-day operations, and she was on a mat leave. So I took over and I started doing this thing called fan mail, which was more because we don't get a lot of exposure. I work out of Vancouver. We have a team all over. And so I really wanted people to know, like, I see you. You might not be in my day-to-day, but like, I see you beyond a sunshine of like, hey, this was something nice. It's just like a small something that they've done. So we do fan mail as well. So it's every Friday. There's like a recap of,
We'll go into some of the evolution of TalkShop, but I have to ask, where does Oprah fall into this whole scheme?
Yeah. So Oprah I was working at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and this is a good story too. So it was like, so Brian Scudamore's the founder. I think they're now O2Es. And so it was like his goal in life to be on Oprah and Ellen. And so I was always sort of the hack of those shows is they have a page like deep in the bowels of their website that are like upcoming segments. And so what I realized is like, oh, if you just start to like reply to the posts, you have a much higher, it gets read. And so, it was like, oh, is there a garage makeover we could do? I negotiated the whole hoarders relationship. Like it was cool to help them with some of that stuff. And so anyways, I was surfing Oprah. And I think while I was doing that, I came across this, like, do you have a story about the debt diet? And I had seen an episode. I was back in those days, you had to like TiVo the show because you were working. But I had seen it, and it was really sort of foreshadowing the 2008 recession, just saying like everyone is living beyond their means. This is what you need to do. It was sort of like an 8-part whatever. And so, and I was that person. I was like 20 in my early 20s and kind of blown through school, felt very like I missed my childhood. I'd missed my, young adulthood. And so how I was going to make up for it was just like have a fabulous life, have an apartment and nice things, and like just be so well dressed on my little $50,000 salary that I could not afford half of my life. And so it was, I wasn't in like an obscene amount of debt, but I wasn't I was spending more than I was making, and I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. And I just sort of knew deep down it was like not feeling good. And it was like problematic in my relationship. My husband's very frugal. So he was like, what is this? Like, great. So anyway, so we started to do, so we being a couple of girls from 1-800 Got Junk, and then a couple of other friends, were like, let's just work through this like little booklet the Oprah show had done. And so we had done really well. We had like, paid down a bunch of debt, more like I sold my car, we moved. I just tried to do a bunch of things to like cut expenses. And my big thing was like, I want to make more. Not really like, I feel like I'm not the best at spending less, but I can earn more and be better about how I spend that. And so anyway, so I wrote in, and like I said, I'm a good writer. And so I put my PR, hat on. And so it had been months and months and months. And the Oprah show called me at work, and I'm like, oh my God, I finally got them on Oprah. And then they started to talk about the debt diet and the smart cookies, which we had just sort of called our group the smart cookies. And I was like, oh, anyway. So then long story short, they had us out. The funniest thing with that show too, is they, for regular people, like non-celebrities, they kind of trick you, because you would just spiral if you knew you were meeting Oprah. So they were like, okay, surprise, we're going to fly you guys all out to watch the show get taped. Oh, they had flown a producer out, and we had taped a little like vignette, like a 2-minute video thing. And so we were just going to fly there, sit in the audience, get to watch our little vignette. And then the day of, they took us into the green room, and they're like, well, Oprah might like maybe ask you guys in the audience what like about your vignette. Okay, so let's just practice. Like if she asks you, and then they started media training us. And so it's just like, do it again, but like tighter, say it, less words. And so anyways, we go out and sit, and we're like in the front row, and they do the first segment. She does that whole show like live, like just reads it off a prompter, like it's coming out of her brain, but it's on the teleprompter. And so then they cut for commercial, and they put up like 5 stools, and then she's like, okay, smart cookies, come on up, smart cookies. We're like, what? So yeah, we just then
you didn't have time to freak out.
No, you just sort of like black out in your own mind. And yeah, we had a good interview, and the rest is history. That from that show, and at that time, I think it went to 42 million households. Like your brain can't even process those kinds of numbers. But anyways, yeah, it was.
That led to TV series, books.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah. We got a lit agent. So Richard Pine, shout out, got us an incredible deal with Random House. We wrote 2 books with them. Got a TV series that eventually ended up being on the Oprah network as well. And it was amazing. It was really
incredible.
Amazing. Yeah. 5 Canadian doofuses, just being money experts.
For Talk Shop Media, what was the first milestone? I know you mentioned you landed a big client.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably winning Sotheby's International Realty Canada was really our first international client, and they had like zero confidence in earned media and PR at the time. They'd sort of blown through individual publicists, and and I think a lot of people, this is where business minded is really a value, is like we know we have to move the dial. Like people are not going to pay you if they're not seeing a return. And so, we really took the time to understand what was important to them. They were very clear, we're not in every market. We're not like RE/MAX. We're operating in the top tier of luxury real estate. We really need to sort of own that area. And so one of the big things we help them with is creating like where you own data, you own information. Like if you are the source of really solid information that the media want, there will always be this like symbiotic relationship of them wanting to talk to you and vice versa. So we started doing these, we called them the top tier reports, which were really looking at, what's happening in the luxury segment in Vancouver, in Calgary, in Edmonton, and I was in Canada at the time. And that just started to generate a huge amount of coverage and sort of put their CEO on the map, put them on the map. And we were doing, one of our old values was being scrappy, but we did it in such a scrappy way where, I mean, now the data is so much more robust and we've been able to kind of grow with them and supporting that. But at that time, we were sourcing like MLS data with overlaying with things and just really trying to, obviously have good information, but do it in a way that was not what didn't cost them any more. And I think they appreciated that. And then as they grew, we started to grow with them. And yeah, it's been, as long as TalkShop's been around, they've been a client of ours and we just adore them.
How did you attract them initially?
Yeah.
Because like now you look at the site, I can pull it up, but like,
Yeah.
You have Starbucks, you have,
Yeah.
you
Reddit,
have all these
yeah.
big companies, then you didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We didn't know. God, we had like a car dealership and, no, not exciting clients. You talked about this earlier in the show, like relationships are everything. And I think that was how it came through. As a friend of a friend knew me. She was, I think, their VP marketing. And she just said, hey, I'll give you guys a shot. Normally this goes to the big firms, but I think you're scrappy and you guys would do a good job, but like, we won't even commit to a 3-month engagement. Like this is 1 month at a time kind of thing. We were like, great. And I
take it.
Bulk of my clients are like, if you tell me I can't do something, like watch me dedicate the rest of my life to proving that I can do it. So I think that in a weird way has been super motivating, is just, getting to get in there and prove them wrong.
Here's the Sotheby's one you can see here. Really, I mean.
Yeah. When I read the impact reports, it's like 30 million impressions. And like we do an ad equivalency value. And
that's amazing. Talk about the evolution. So like you started off born out of PR.
Just PR. Yeah.
How did it grow? How did the services go from there? What did it look like?
Yeah, that is a great question. Let me think. So at that time, it was PR, and PR was, it was fine. It was lucrative, but social media really came on the scene, and it was just sort of fractured. It was like the big agencies didn't even necessarily believe that this was going to be a thing, so they weren't doing a very good job. We weren't totally sure how to do it, and then you'd see sort of smaller little social agencies start doing it, and then it became just like a requirement. Like our clients were like, if we're going to spend money on this, we need blog writing and somebody to manage our, Facebook community at the time. I think it was sort of like Facebook and Twitter where it started. And we just, started to see that was what our clients needed. And in the very beginning, it was like, I would actually say up until the last 5 to 6 years, like we were doing social, like organic social with this is just because we need to retain the client. We're not really making a lot of money at it. So we're going to keep it relatively small-ish. And so we had really up until I think 2017, dual hires, like a PR person that then flips into a community manager. And that wasn't great because there's
a lot of cross training.
Yeah, it was a lot of cross training. The skill sets are different. Now I look at our digital team and I'm like, oh my God, they're like savants. Like they're so technologically sophisticated, and our comms people are way more, they're writers and they're not the same brain. And so it took us a while to find that.
You grew into it.
Yeah, it grew into it. We really toyed with acquisitions. I think I'm glad we didn't in the end make an acquisition. We brought somebody in who she actually owned an agency and was like, I have no intention of selling it or growing it beyond sort of my clients, but she consulted to us on here's what we think you would need for, So then we got, who she's now our VP, but her name's Kristen Lee, and she has done an incredible job of building out that team, which now is like a solid 40% of our revenue. And they're just doing their ability to hone in on data and insights and make really strategic recommendations because they understand data, is just it's world-class. It's so good.
Katie, I know that you have some crazy stories from your journey, from what you've helped clients with, but so I want to talk about There's been data breach stuff you worked on.
Yeah.
There's been death stuff that you worked on.
Yeah.
I don't know which one you want to tackle
Well,
first.
yeah, the data breach is interesting. Well, and it's interesting because I mean, we use the blanket term data breach. It was actually like a ransom attack. And so the very large public I shouldn't even say, I have to be to protect the privacy of our clients.
Yeah.
I can't say, and I probably can't even say the type of industry anyways, but it was
No
in
worries.
the public world. And at the time this was happening all across the country. And so I got the call that they were pretty sure there had been this attack and nothing was working. So right from their phones to their email to their payroll, they couldn't pay their people. And so what started happening is like speculation just runs rampant. And so then people are like talking to other people, and now it's on Twitter, and now it's on the news. And so once it's in the news, it's like trying to pull that back reel it back in is really, really hard. And so it was really fun. You sort of enter like a special, what is it, SEAL Team 6, like you come in, it was like me and the lawyers and the insurance company, and you just have to lay it down. Like, nobody speaks on this without like the expressed approval of like, we have to contain this. So in that instance, because there was already information that had gotten out there, we were like, well, would we have normally talked to the public about it? Especially when, the biggest thing I've learned through working with lawyers on these kinds of things is just like and in general, it's a good law for speaking to media is like, don't speculate unless you absolutely know with certainty. And even then, do you have to disclose that? Like, what's the advantage of disclosing it? So they weren't 100% certain, but they're pretty certain. But it had already gotten out there. So it was really about controlling the message. So then we really worked in concert with those two other parties to make sure that I can't say the person's name, but the person that was doing the briefings, there was a daily briefing to media so that it was, and that we really backed away from this is a ransom attack, and neutralize the language into like, there's been a breach, an information breach. We're still trying to figure out the severity of this, but this is what you can expect from us. And then really just making it clear that like we will be transparent. We're not hiding anything. People had a lot of fears about they had their personal and financial information. Would that be shared? And so we just worked and really were able to contain that in a way that took it from an initial freak out to like it barely made the news afterwards, because they were so transparent. And so I think, I was saying to you earlier, like the rules for issues management, whether you're working on a death or in something like that, where there's like a ransom situation, are really, you need to have sort of a key team and a key infrastructure in place about how communication will roll. I would always err on the side of like, put nothing in writing, like next to nothing. Assume that everything that you write down is going to get flipped to the media or posted on Twitter, or, and that, just like, don't write it down. In another situation I worked on where there was a very tragic death of a young person, and it was really, it was catastrophic in a sense, and it was catastrophic. It would have been catastrophic to that brand. And so the mission that I was working on was like, we just need to contain this so that it doesn't become a headline news story. And so what we ended up doing was having like I said, we're going to have to, when these people come in, like, we're going to have a conversation with every single person so that they know, yes, they know what happened, but they're, you don't want to find that out secondhand, but that they're not seeing it in writing, that they know that there's a point of contact who will have an honest conversation, and that we've, pre-thought through every possible question. And we have like a significant response that we can give somebody who's like, what happened to somebody I know? Like, and again, like, act with integrity and compassion. Somebody died. Like, that is not where yes, we need to protect the brand, but we need to be human beings and acknowledging how traumatic that is. And so that also meant making sure the right resources were brought in place for the staff, for the individuals that, were in that space. So it's
I think there's another book, maybe, Katie, like the rules for issue management. But some of the notes I took here was, really control the message, create some kind of neutral language. So it's not like over the top. As
you're
far
addressing
as how
it, but you're not specific about it.
Having a key team, communications key. Don't put it in writing. Actually, obviously be human and have that conversation, have a point of contact. So people have that.
Pick up the phone and call them that they know that somebody's taking this really seriously. Somebody important is taking this really seriously. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, as you think about that, the last question, because I know we're right at the time here, but it's just mentors and some of the influence. I know you mentioned Cameron Harold. Who are some other mentors throughout your career? It could be mentors you actually were personally mentoring with, or maybe it's distant mentors. Or something like that.
I've learned so much from people that I have mentored that it is equally so rewarding, and it teaches you so much. I would say so. Yeah, Cameron hired me. He I think inceptioned the idea that I was an entrepreneur and would one day have my own business. And so I credit him with that. Judy Brooks, who he actually introduced me to, who, she is just one of the most unsung entrepreneurs in the game. She's more than an entrepreneur, but she has an organization called Immerse Yourself. So she does immersions with, it is mostly entrepreneurs, but really creates this connection to community with this sort of like brain science. So understanding yourself. And then she has just been, she has been so supportive of me as like a working parent, as somebody who's worked, I've had many, many business partners. And so those often come with like a host of, it's like a marriage, right? So it comes with all kinds of challenges. And so she's really been incredible at helping us navigate through that. So Judy Brooks is incredible. I had a financial mentor in very, very early days of the business named Bev Briscoe, who is also just one of the greats. And and she was one of those women who, award-winning CFO and just an incredibly brilliant financial mind, but also made, sort of sometimes the way that legal can sort of be overly complicated for a concept that you're like, okay, this means this, and this. She did that for me with finances, where she just really was like, you need a pro forma. This is what a perform, don't get hung up on doing it perfectly, but it needs to tell us these things. So we know, like, when will the money run out? When do we need to do that? She was incredible.
I love it. First of all, Katie, I want to be the first one to thank you. Just thanks for sharing your stories, your journey. Everyone check out talkshopmedia.com and more episodes of the podcast. And thanks, Katie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jeremy. It was so much fun. I appreciate it.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.